Welcome to the Fear Chronicles, false evidence appearing real, where we are covering real stories for navigating burnout, bold moves, and becoming your best self. I'm your host, Natasha Aga, private practice strategist, mother of two, and recovering perfectionist. This is the space where we get honest about the pivots, the pressure, and the purpose behind it all. If you're navigating life transitions, career shifts, motherhood, or learning to trust yourself again, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome to part two of this nervous system series. So, I broke these episodes down in a way to make these not only digestible, but in a way that makes sense. Because I could go on and talk about these in forever and in depth. But that is something that I do with my clients as I curate techniques that work specifically for them. Every person is different, and not all techniques will work or have the same effectiveness. So, in this episode, I want to provide an array of nervous system regulation techniques that I have found helpful on my journey to becoming her. So, it was not until I really started doing the inner work when I realized how incredibly dysregulated I was. And not all of the techniques I tried were effective, but many were. Some things I took and then I just put my own spin on them, and now they are amazing. I don't do them all every day, but there are some that I do complete intentionally daily as part of my non negotiable morning routine. So, the point I want to drive home here is nervous system regulation techniques are fabulous. They are fabulous to calm and regulate yourself, in that moment or immediately after the fact of, say, a triggering event. However, the true goal is to incorporate regulating your nervous system as a form of hygiene, an everyday practice before you escalate. It helps to build or recreate that homeostasis within the body. You're human, so it's not like you're never going to get upset. And what you may find, as I have, is if you use the techniques daily and find the calm, inner peace before you start your day or at any point in the day, your threshold of what you can hold or before getting triggered will be much higher than if you were already burned out, incredibly irritable, and feeling completely out of sorts. You essentially will feel like you have no control over yourself, your emotions, or your situation. And you may feel like that right now. And if that's the case, this episode and this series is for you. Everything is a choice. You can choose to be reactive, maintain neutrality, or respond from the point of being her. Again, thinking about what would she do? How would she act? And how would she react in these situations? Making the changes you desire and the ways that you want to be. Being intentional about your responses. Again, that's your language, your thoughts, your self talk, or the way you respond to situations. You are in control of your life and what you allow or do not allow to bother you. There's no emotional bypassing, as I've talked about in previous episodes. Feel your feelings, let them run through you, process them, reflect, ask yourself why you felt that way or why you reacted in such a way. In order to have what you desire, which is reaching your goals or physical possessions, you have to do, and that's taking the aligned actions. Now, in order to be truly inspired and take the inspired aligned actions, you have to be her, embody her. Is that future version of yourself calm, courageous, powerful, and full of self trust and belief? Or is she full of dread, panicking, overwhelmed, and ripping her hair out, my guess, it would be the former. Here is where I'm going to share some breathing techniques that are incredibly helpful. And you can do these sitting or lying down. The first is box breathing. So, for all of the breathing, I will just say you will always inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. This is actually how to always regulate and activate your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. So, for box, you think of 4, 4, 4, 4. So, you'll inhale through your nose for a count of 4, hold for 4 seconds, exhale through your mouth for 4, hold for 4, and repeat 4, 4, 4, 4. And you can do that for, again, as many times that it feels good, you find effective, or that you may need, because you may need to do this several times. The next breathing technique is 4, 7, 8. So again, you would inhale through your nose for a count of 4, hold for 7 seconds, and then exhale through the mouth for 8 seconds. So for a lot of kind of box breathing, I will say, personally found the most effective is when my inhalation count is shorter than my exhalation. So breathing out for longer than my inhale. And again, that is just another form of regulating the nervous system. But personally, I found that more effective than box breathing. So that's just a side note. But all are great. And then the next breathing technique is deep belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. So if you're a speech therapist, I'm sure you're very familiar. I have taught many, many clients in my career about diaphragmatic breathing, but to actually do it consistently as a daily practice is a completely whole other story. So again, that's, deep inhalation through your nose. I usually will still hold, but you don't have to, and then exhale through your mouth. Now, for this particular one, I typically combine diaphragmatic breathing with completing my visualization exercises and practices that I've talked about in, I believe, the last 3-part series that I did, which was on frequency. So, that, again, that's just another side note. Now, I also wanted to include a few techniques that are somatic techniques. So, this is can be combined with obviously breathing, but these focus more on kind of sensory or touch. Okay. So the first is humming and humming om. So I'll do a little quick demonstration, but this is a deep breath in through your nose. And then when you exhale, the you're going to exhale om. What this does, and you do that for the complete exhale. And what this does is, so a tap-based technique is, again, you could be sitting up or lying down, but it is like giving yourself a hug and literally just rubbing both of your hands up and down the upper part of your arms. And what this does, it's releasing those feel-good hormones, right? So feel-good hormones are what we do when we actually receive a hug or give a hug to somebody else and you do it to yourself, right? You'd be amazed at how good that actually feels when you just give yourself a hug intentionally with the purpose of doing that. The next technique is the butterfly technique, which is similar to what we just talked about. In this case, you would again cross your arms in front of you, like you're giving yourself a hug, and you're going to have both of your hands near your shoulders. And from there, you're going to rhythmically tap one hand on each shoulder at a time and go back and forth. I kind of think of that as like those metronomes, right? And you're just doing that back and forth. And it's another way to regulate your nervous system. Sometimes, not always, I will pair this with the humming. But either way, doing this with some deep belly breathing, I found really effective. Now, another somatic technique is the shake, and that is exactly what it sounds like. This is this is one where you're not sitting or laying down because you want to be upright and be on your feet, jumping and shaking out your body to release the stagnant energies. And you can do this phases where it's just your hands, then it's your arms, and then it's your legs. This one can be super fun, and I don't want you to overthink it. So, this is sometimes what I'll do. You can do whatever you want. You can just jump around, do whatever. You can throw on some music and do this. Um, Sometimes what I'll do, to be just like completely honest, because it's fun, because have more fun, is I'll throw on that Taylor Swift song, Shake It Off, and just do that. And I'm doing my somatic release, and I'm just, jumping and shaking and doing all the things. And you know what? I feel incredibly amazing afterwards. And it just, the small pieces of just physically moving and with intentional purposes, amazing. So try the shake. And the other one I want to talk about, and this one, I hadn't heard of it until this past year. Um, and I think it's huge. And I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about it, which is called emotional freedom technique, or EFT. So it has changed my life. In fact, this is something that I plan to even, share with my own children at some point because it is so helpful. So you take a specific issue that you wish to address, and that could be anything from self-worth, money, career, love, doesn't matter. And you can use like a setup phrase. And what that means is, it's the phrase that starts it off, and you do what they call kind of like this karate chop, which is like, it doesn't matter if you're right or left-handed, but you have one hand up, almost like you're going to do karate chop, and then you start tapping just so lightly, like you're tapping someone on the shoulder, but you're doing that on the outside point of your hand to the other hand. And you say this setup phrase, like for example, even though I have blank, whatever your setup phrase is, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. You keep tapping and say it again, say it a few times, and then from there, the karate chop goes from there to different meridian points. So this is a combination of psychology and like some Chinese acupuncture. So that the theory of it anyway. So then you go to different points of the body, and that is typically between the eyebrows, the tapping, and then it goes under, or from the eyebrows to the temples, under the nose, then your chin, your collarbone, and then under the arms. So, oh, and then back to the top of the head. Can't forget that one because that feels great. So with each point, a different phrase is used to acknowledge the issue, the thoughts, the feelings, and then ultimately flipping them to empowering statements, which can be repeated again as many times as needed. So I'm not going to run through one in this episode, but there are tons of videos all over social media on different types that you can check out and try. What I will say is not all of those videos are created equal. So there are some people who really know what they're doing and do it amazingly. So yeah, throw it into YouTube, Instagram, whatever, just to get an idea of how it goes and try a few. They are amazing. And for me, what I found is usually the longer the EFT tapping sequence is, the better. And then, of course, there's always music. So, again, that could be music paired with visualizations, which is something that I do. Um, you can, of course, there's just different, different kinds of music for different moods. So, if you, of course, want to relax, maybe you want to have some orchestra music or some like old school contemporary. You could try pink or white noise. Pink is actually my favorite. There's binaural beats. You could listen to different frequencies. My personal recommendation would be 432 hertz, if that's something you want to try. And then lastly is quiet meditation. And I'm actually dedicating the part three of the three-part series to just that because that's how incredibly important this practice is. So it's getting its own episode. So stay tuned for that next episode. I would love to hear from you. Any light bulb moments, insights, or takeaways from this episode. So you can share with me on Instagram at Natasha Aga Consulting or comment below. As always, I invite you to take my 2-minute Are You the Bottleneck quiz to find out who or what is slowing down your progress. It's fast, fun, and eye-opening, which will also be linked in the show notes below. Thanks for joining me on the F.E.A.R Chronicles. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to like, comment, or share with someone who needs it. Want more support? Check out the links below for free resources, workshops, and how to work with me. Remember, bold moves start with small shifts. You've got this, and I've got you.